the North Atlantic Military Organization NATO leaders have converged in Madrid in Spain to discuss the current security volatility in Europe. This comes after Russia escalated its attack on Ukraine using missiles that landed in the capital Kyiv and striking a shopping mall. The other development within NATO is that Turkey has abandoned its push to stop Sweden and Finland from joining the organization. For more on this, we're joined by the international news editor Sophie Mokoena. A very good day to you, Sophie. Thanks for coming through to studio today. What's the significance of this particular NATO meeting?
Quite an important meeting, because here NATO must take a decision in terms of how they are going to handle the Ukraine crisis going forward. But also there was a request from Finland and Sweden to join NATO, and therefore the meeting is quite important.
So the decision taken by Turkey not to oppose Finland and Sweden joining the organization, what does that mean?
Well, it means now the expansion of NATO continues. You know very well that
Despite Russia's actions.
Yes, exactly. That's what Russia didn't want. But unfortunately, today the chief of NATO, Van Stoltenberg, made an announcement that Finland and Sweden will definitely join NATO. Let's take a listen at what Van Stoltenberg had to say, NATO chief.
Okay, good morning. Then I think we're ready to start. It's good to see you all, and welcome to this NATO summit, graciously hosted by Spain. This summit will take important decisions to strengthen NATO in a more dangerous and competitive world, where authoritarian regimes like Russia and China are openly challenging the rules-based international order. We will agree NATO's new strategic concept, the blueprint for our future security. We will further strengthen our deterrence and defense with more forces, increased readiness and stronger capabilities. We will make sure that our alliance is properly resourced to face new security challenges. And we will strengthen our partnership in our close neighborhood and across the globe. We will demonstrate that NATO's door remains open by inviting Finland and Sweden to join our alliance. We will adopt a more comprehensive assistance package for Ukraine and sustain our unprecedented support for the country's self-defense to ensure that Ukraine prevails. I'm glad that President Zelensky is joining us today. The bravery of the Ukrainian people and armed forces have inspired the world.
So in spite of Russia's efforts, NATO's membership growing, and Van Stoltenberg, they're saying they want to counter authoritarian regimes like Russia and China, which threaten the future of security.
Yes, declaring war on the two BRICS member countries, that is China and Russia. I mean, when you say they are authoritarian regimes, clearly we might expect the regime change, either political or military. You know that there has been a standoff as we speak now that Russia shouldn't attend the G20 summit, which speaks to the tension between Russia, the West, including America.
So it's NATO on the one hand and the G7 outcomes, which are also very critical of Russia. What's Russia planning at this moment? What
we know is that the president of Russia today, Vladimir Putin, is visiting neighboring countries. This is his first visit outside Russia since the war in Ukraine, and therefore he is also mobilizing, and he's made it clear yesterday that he will definitely attend the G20 meeting in Indonesia, either virtual or in person. And therefore the tension in Europe and the two blocs, the powerful bloc, clearly there is tension, and I think this is something that people around the world should be worried about, because it will continue to affect issues such as food security, but also development. And you know that this comes after the impact of the COVID-19, where the world is trying to build back better. And therefore this is not good news at all in terms of the tension that is escalating. You heard that Zelensky is going to join the NATO leaders. I think it will be virtual, and I think he's going to make a plea for military assistance. And clearly yesterday, President of the United States of America has made a commitment that they are going to ensure that they do assist Ukraine. It's bad news, Desiree.
So at this point, Russia clearly not backing down. But one interesting outcome from the G7 that I found, Sophie, was instead of clear out sanctions, they decided to cap production and supply of, securing of oil from Russia. What can we read from that?
The problem is many countries in Europe are depending on Russia for oil, and you cannot do the phasing out of supply abruptly. You have to do it gradually, and that is why in terms of gas and oil as well, you saw the Chancellor of Germany visiting the continent to try and secure supply of oil. And you know now that some of the European countries have decided to go back to coal, which has kind of caused tension because you expect developing countries to move away from fossil fuel, and you are continuing. And therefore, it looks like the world is not speaking in unison or, singing from the same hymn book.
You know, when President Thabo Mbeki used to attend G7 meetings, we knew that there was a consistent message of African Renaissance. What message is President Cyril Ramaphosa taking to the G7?
I think the leaders that we've had in South Africa have different perspectives. You have Mandela, who was more on reconciliation, both local and international. You had Mbeki, who was very firm, not positioning South Africa, but positioning the entire continent, because he knew that you have a strong population. At that time, it was 1 billion, which is a strong buying power and strong power. And he always emphasized Africa, Africa. President Ramaphosa, background, business, union, and therefore his approach will be quite different. You can see that his focus is to rebuild the economy, but of course speaking on behalf of the continent, because at the AU level there has been a decision that any leader who is having a platform to sell his country must also sell the continent.
I'm told we're out of time, so we're going to leave it here, but I wanted to ask you just in terms of what prominence the Africa Free Trade Agreement gets at these meetings, but that's a conversation for another time. Sophie, thank you so much for making the time to speak to us. Sophie Mokoena is the international news editor here at the SABC.